afternoon, and today you're welcome to another interesting and insightful episode on our talk show, Insights for Ex-Matters Legal. Today we'll be talking about a very important topic and discourse within the company law, which is the company secretary. My name is Esther, your host as usual. Welcome. So today we want to discuss who is the company secretary, what are their roles, what are their duties in a company. A lot of times people think, okay, maybe they are just the ones, it's just a secretary, they just do secretarial work. It is deeper than that. It is more important than that. So who is the company secretary under the company law? We'll basically be using the Company Akinleye-Martins Act, amended in the year 2020 in Nigeria, as our guide, because for now, that's the local jurisdiction. However, internationally, the company secretary roles and duties is the same, basically, in all jurisdictions, especially under the common law. Using Nigeria as a case study, we operate our legal system under the common law because Nigeria was colonized by Britain, and in the United Kingdom, the common law operates in that jurisdiction. So today, who is the company secretary? The company secretary is responsible majorly for the efficient administration of the company. In fact, I'll shock you, most of the time, the company secretary has stronger powers than the chief executive officer of a company, especially in most standardized organizations, even in multinationals. So they're powerful individuals and they are very intelligent. The company secretary is responsible, like I said, for the efficient administration of a company, particularly regarding ensuring compliance with statutory and regulatory requirements to ensure that the board of directors do the right thing at the right time. That everything regarding the regulatory and statutory requirements of the company is implemented and duly complied with. When we look at the Company Akinleye-Martins Act in Nigeria, we first start our discourse from what the law says. Like I said, our guide for the purpose of this discourse is the Company Akinleye-Martins Act, as amended in the year 2020. Under the Company Akinleye-Martins Act, year 2020, Section 332, 2020, provides for the qualification who a company secretary is, especially a company secretary of a public company. Before I proceed, I need to let us understand that under the law, we have different types of company that the company law has provided for in several jurisdictions. So we have the private company, we have the public company, we have public company limited by shares, we have private company, limited by liability, different things. However, we're not going into that today. But my purpose of mentioning this is to the effect that under the Company Akinleye-Martins Act, the Company Akinleye-Martins Act makes it very mandatory, especially for public companies, to have a company secretary. Because the level of compliance has to be in line with basically international best practices. Don't forget, a public company is the one that has shareholders, outsiders, the public, investing. So there are a lot of stake, there are a lot of interest that is at stake in a public company than a private company. A private company can just be a man, his wife, and his children, and they just form the company. They are limited. But a public company is not limited. It has different and diverse interests. So the level of compliance required under the law by a public company is more stringent than that of a private company. So Section 332 of the Company Akinleye-Martins Act enjoins every public company to have a company secretary and provides for the qualification of the company secretary of a public company as follows. 1, a company secretary could be a member of the Institute of Charter Secretaries and Administrators. So we have internationally recognized the Institute of Charter Secretaries and Administrators. So a company secretary could be a qualified member of that institute. Also, a legal practitioner can act as company secretary of a public company. A member of any professional body of accountants from time to time by an act of the National Assembly. So in Nigeria, you see the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. Abroad, you see a member of the Association of Certified Accountants, ACCA, could be a company secretary of a company. Any person who has held the office of the secretary of a public company for at least 3 to 5 years immediately preceding his appointment could also be a company secretary. That means the person became the company secretary by experience because he had actually been operating in that role for a couple of years. So a body, corporate, a juristic personality, a company, a firm of lawyers, a firm of accountants, a firm of chartered secretaries could act as company secretary of a company. So also Section 333, because the law, in a sense, serves as a guide, and Section 333 also of the CAMA provides for the appointment and removal of company secretaries under the law, whether be it a private company or a public company in this sense. So before we go into all those issues, we want to really see what does a company secretary do. So the company secretary is an officer of the company, like we said. He ensures efficient administration of the company. He makes sure he or she or the body of or the body corporate, depending on who is appointed, they make sure that the company is run efficiently in terms of efficient statutory and regulatory compliance. So a company secretary ensures that an organization complies with relevant legislation and regulation. They make sure the board of directors are informed of their legal responsibilities. And that is why most of the time, most public companies, especially multinationals, they try their best to make sure or appoint a lawyer or a body of legal practitioners as company secretaries, because the company secretary has to really understand the law, especially the law in relation to even what the industry, the sector in which that company is operating. Company secretaries are companies named representatives of legal documents. So you see in Nigeria, in the Corporate Affairs Commission, the company secretary has to sign. There is a proper route document in the Corporate Affairs Commission, especially in Nigeria, and in also even the company house in the UK, there are documentations for the appointment of a company secretary. So it shows you how important a company secretary is. So it's their responsibility to ensure that the company and its directors operate within the law. I need to say this, in many jurisdictions, private companies have traditionally been required by law to appoint one person as a company secretary. And most of the time, they are senior members of the law. However, now under the CAMA here in Nigeria, they really don't mandate. They make it more compulsory for a public company. Albeit, it does not mean that a private company could not have a company secretary. Most private companies too have a company secretary because they have to also make sure that they operate within the ambit of the law, making sure that they have proper compliance. Because a private company could also want to be listed one day and be quoted on the stock exchange. So he has to make sure that even from the roots, from the foundation, it does things properly and right. What are the roles of a company secretary? Like I said, the secretary has to be a member of those recognized bodies or have those experience I've listed. And also, they do secretarial functions. What are their secretarial functions? So their duties can be divided into secretarial functions. It can also be divided into the legal obligations. Their duties also relate to the maintenance of statutory books by the company, and they also have other duties. So what are their secretarial functions? They make sure and ensure that compliance of the provisions of the company law and rules in that jurisdiction where the company is operating is properly adhered to. They make sure that the memorandum of association and the articles of association of the company is properly followed. Not that when we say memorandum of association of company, just to discuss, for people who may not understand, they are the objects. It's a document like a Bible of a company. So the memorandum and articles of association is what states what's the vision of this company, what's the objective, what's the kind of business this company is allowed to do, how many shareholders is it going to have, who are the subscribers. So it's like the Bible that gives you a guide about, okay, yes, this is what this company is about. So the company secretary of either a private or public company, they make sure that the memorandum and association of the company is properly and duly followed. So they ensure that the affairs of the company are managed in accordance with the objective as contained in the articles of association. Not that the company is founded or formed to provide, for instance, wood production or wood manufacturing. And next thing is producing iron. That kind of company is already operating ultra vires, breaching its article of association. And if that company has a company secretary, definitely such should not happen, because the company secretary should put the company in line. They prepare the agenda for meetings of the company. They make sure that meetings are held regularly according to the law, under the company law, in any jurisdiction, whether the common law or the civil law. The Companies Act of every jurisdiction provides for several kinds of meetings that companies should have, whether private or public. So there are special meetings, extraordinary general meetings. There are meetings that should come up at different intervals, especially for a public company, because they have to file at the corporate company house or corporate affairs commission or the authority that regulates companies in that jurisdiction. And the company secretary makes sure that meetings are held according to the law. They prepare the agenda for the meeting. They consult with the chairman of the board of directors. They make sure. So you can see how important the role of the company secretary is. They make sure that everything is done by the books. They arrange with and call and hold meetings with the board of directors to make sure that the record of proceedings are properly done for the meeting. They attend board meetings to ensure that all the legal requirements, they coordinate the board meeting. So the company secretary, there can be no meeting without a proper company secretary, because they are the ones that make sure the minutes are properly taken. They take the minutes, they record the proceedings, and taking the minutes includes basically recording the proceedings of the meeting. They make sure that the legal requirements are properly fulfilled. Most of the time, public companies are required that even after an annual general meeting, the minutes or extracts of the minutes of meetings are sent to, for instance, in Nigeria, the Corporate Affairs Commission. So the company secretary will make sure that all those things are properly done. They prepare other documentations for general meetings. They work on the annual, extraordinary general meetings, special meetings, making sure that everything is in proper compliance. They carry out all matters concerned regarding allotment of shares, issuance of share certificates, including maintaining the statutory share register of the public company. So a company secretary is involved in, okay, yes, you say, okay, I'm a shareholder of the company. The share register of each company, of the public company, is maintained by the company secretary. So it shows you how important. In case somebody wants to even do a share transfer, the company secretary conducts appropriate activities in relation to that as well. They prepare, approve, sign and seal agreements of the company, leases, all the documentations. They make sure they work in line even with the legal counsels of companies to make sure that every agreement is in proper custody, every agreement is properly sealed. So you must have seen, even in documents, annual reports, documents that come out from companies, even agreements, you see in the signature execution page, you see that what they write is sign maybe director, and they put director or company secretary as the second person to sign. So a company secretary may not be a director in the company, but most often than not, they are more powerful than even a director of the company, because they make sure that things work. So it's like they are like the engine room of the company. So they advise in conjunction with the company solicitors, like I said earlier. They make sure that all the legal things are properly done for the company. They advise on legal matters. They advise on other matters that could be an issue for the company. Like we discussed last week, we spoke about the ESG imperatives, which is now a new area, most of the time now that companies are required to make sure that they comply with. The company secretaries, in this case, they have a role and a duty to make sure that ESG criteria are properly complied with by their companies. They also have custody of the company seal. So a company secretary makes sure that the seal of the company, there's something we call a country seal. Most of the time it's like a metallic object that they use to seal documents. They make sure that the company seal is in proper custody, because the seal of the company is very, very important, and it cannot just be in the hands of any Tom, Dick, and Harry. What are the legal obligations of the company secretary? They file various documents and returns, annual returns of the company. They make sure that the company accountants, the external auditors, they properly do their work. So most of the time you see that as company secretaries are liaising with companies' lawyers, they're also really liaising with the company's accountants. So it's not as if their role can be placed in a box. So a company secretary of a company, whether individual or a body corporate, they have to be very versatile. They have to be very intelligent, because they could make or mar the organization. And that is why most of the time, when companies want to fill the role of a company secretary, they don't just go for any Tom, Dick, and Harry, if you know what I mean. They go for people that are very sound. Most of the time, even people that have experience over time. If it's the company they want to choose as their company secretaries, they make sure that the companies have proven track records, for that kind of role. So they make sure that they file all the various documents as required. For instance, in Nigeria, there are documentations required by the Corporate Affairs Commission to be filed at periodic times. The company secretaries, they make sure that all these are filed on behalf of the company. The annual returns are filed as provided by the company law. They maintain proper books and register of the company as required under the law. They make sure that legal requirements of allotments have been mentioned, the share certificates, mortgages, charges. They relate with the banks regarding the assets and liabilities of the company. So many things are involved in what the company secretary does. Like we said, they make sure that meetings are convened properly, they are recorded, meetings are recorded properly. They implement policies formulated by directors. So when the board of directors sits down and they make policies and they say this, they make sure that those policies are properly implemented. So we can also say they work in conjunction with the human resources department of even the organization. So you can see how important the role of the company secretary is. So they also ensure the arrangement for a public company. The company secretary of the public company makes sure that the shareholders get their dividends on time, especially where the company have made a profit. Of course, nobody will expect a dividend. Dividend is like, okay, a return to the shareholder that invests in the company. So within the prescribed period, company secretaries will make sure that the dividends are properly paid and duly paid as at when due, especially where the public company makes a profit for the year under review. The company secretary ensures that statutory books are properly maintained. So we have different registers that the company secretary keeps. So the office is even very, very busy. You are looking for any document in any standard organization, even be it public or private company. You are not expected to even go and look for that document in the CEO's office. Ideally, those proper, important, crucial documentation of the company, they should be in the office of the company secretary. So register of transfer of shares they keep, register of buyback of shares, by the company, register of mortgages and charges, register of debenture holders, register of directors and officers of the company, register of contracts, shareholding, local members, minute books, proxy register. When we say proxy register now in a situation where they call for meeting and maybe somebody can stand in for someone if the shareholder cannot come. They make sure that they keep register of beneficial ownerships, deposits on the company, directors' shareholding. They keep register of the contracts of the company, arrangements and appointments with directors and other interested parties. They also ensure that statutory forms are filed promptly. They provide members and auditors of the company with the notice of the meeting. This is very, very important. So if a company calls for a meeting, it's the company secretary that coordinates the meeting. It's the company secretary that calls for the meeting after liaising with the board of directors and sends the notice to relevant parties. They file special resolutions, that have been passed at meetings, to relevant regulatory authorities. They supply copy of the accounts to every member of the company. So when you see, if you are a shareholder in, for instance, a public company, let's say Unilever now, and you're a shareholder to Unilever, most of the time, you see, it's just that these days now we've gone electronic. However, even in electronic situation, they make sure that they send these documents, annual reports, even in emails. They make sure that these things are properly done. It's the work of the company secretary. So they keep and arrange minutes of directors meetings. We said that they make sure that the company's books are properly inspected by people that are entitled to do so. So for instance, members of the company are entitled to a copy of the company register of members and to inspect minutes of his general meetings. The company secretary makes sure that these things are available, and it's not as if they are hoarding it. So like we said earlier also, they keep the company sealed. So invariably, we can say in a nutshell that the company secretary of every company, be it a private or public company, ensures adherence to proper corporate governance in the organization. They ensure adherence to proper corporate governance in the organization. And the company secretary has powers in the sense that the company law allows the company secretary to sign the statutory returns and applications as required under the law. They have roles that they do before each meeting, if they call a meeting. They have roles during the meeting. They have roles after the meeting, and those are the things we've basically enumerated earlier. So the company secretary is to make sure that they have a copy of all the proper documents, essential important documents of the organization, including attendance register at every meeting. So in a nutshell, a company secretary is like the power room of the board of directors, and invariably the power room of a company. So every company is required to have a sound company secretary, not just anyone that can spoil the business of the company for them. And that's why the law takes it very, very, very important and crucial, because the role is very important. So today we've discussed how responsible a company secretary of an organization should be, how they are the ones responsible for ensuring efficient and effective administration of a company, particularly when it comes to ensuring compliance with the statutory and regulatory requirements, making sure that the board of directors, they implement the legal policies, the policies of the company, the legal criteria required by the regulatory authorities. They make sure that the board of directors implement it properly and comply with it. So today also we've discussed the duties and the roles of the company secretary. And also we've mentioned, for instance, that the law, that the company law, the Company Akinleye-Martins Act in Nigeria, for instance, provides for the appointment, also provides for removal. There are instances and when a company secretary could be removed. And the law, especially even in Nigeria and in other jurisdictions, provides for removal of such a company secretary based on certain instances. So of course, if it is proven that the company secretary is fraudulent or maybe is doing some underhanded deals, definitely the law requires that such a company secretary cannot represent an organization, because in that sense they are compromised. So today, I believe we've been able to take you on this journey to give a proper insight and an interesting insight into who the company secretary is. And I hope that now we have a better understanding of the secretarial duties, of the legal duties, of the regulatory duties, of the duties imposed by the law under the company secretary. So we'll come your way again at another episode of Insights from Eximeters Legal. So God bless you and have a good weekend.